Hello, genealogists. This is Craig, and we will continue today our examination and audio discussion of Genealogy as Pastime and Profession by Donald Lyons Jacobus. This will be Chapter 7, Genealogy as a Profession. There are a couple of quotes to begin with. By their fruits ye shall know them, Jesus. And diligence is the mother of good luck, Benjamin Franklin. Conditions in the genealogical profession are unsatisfactory. Any person, regardless of education, experience, or natural ability, can set up to be a professional genealogist. No course of training is required. No examinations as to the fitness have to be passed. For this very reason, the profession appeals to many who lack the mentality for this kind of work and who might be unsuccessful in other professions. Those who employ a lawyer know whether or not he wins their case. Those who employ a physician can judge whether or not he improves their health. But unless those who employ a genealogist themselves have considerable knowledge of genealogical research, they have absolutely no criterion by which to measure the capacity of the genealogist they employ. If the latter reports success and sends them an ancestral line, they are easy dupes and do not readily discover that the line is inaccurate or is based on unreliable printed sources. Because of this, incompetents can survive longer in the genealogical profession than they could in most. Retired clergymen, school teachers who desire less nerve-wracking work, and elderly people who wish to add something to their incomes or pensions often view genealogy as a genteel profession which fulfills their requirements. Some of these people possess the natural mental qualifications for the work and, after they have gained experience, become capable genealogists. Others lack the type of mentality which research requires and never suspect their own unfitness for the work they are doing. Very few professional genealogists are deliberately fraudulent, but many are so naive or careless or haphazard in their work that the results are fully as bad. From the monetary point of view, conditions are also unsatisfactory. It must be borne in mind that an established genealogist is under rather heavy expenses. In the first place, there is bound to be a great waste of time due to the large amount of correspondence. Many people write to genealogists without any expectation of employing them or paying for information, while others write asking whether the genealogist can supply the information they desire without special research. Sometimes a commission results. In any case, both courtesy and business judgment demand that all of these letters be answered. If the genealogist assumes this burden personally, it cuts badly into his working time. If he employs a secretary, her salary must be deducted from his gross earnings. If the genealogist does not live where a large genealogy library is accessible to him, he must try to accumulate a reference library of his own. Even if he resides in a big city, he can save time both for himself and his clients if he owns the books he most frequently needs to consult. Most genealogical books are published in small editions and hence are high-priced at the start. When they are out of print, the price of the second-hand copies goes up alarmingly, or it ordinarily requires a large investment of capital for the genealogist to equip himself with the books he needs. Usually, this reference library has to be built up by slow stages over the course of several years. However, many of the basic out-of-print genealogical reference works and some of the major works on heraldry have been reproduced by photo offset by the Genealogical Publishing Company of Baltimore and its affiliate, the Heraldic Book Company. And since these are available at relatively moderate prices, it is now possible to build a reference collection at a cost that is not prohibitive. Original research involves considerable travel to reach the record sources, and under present conditions, a car is essential, and its cost and upkeep are considerable. Finally, there are many expenses, small in themselves, which in the aggregate foot up to incredible totals. Among these must be classed paper, postage, typewriter, carbon sheets, advertising, and floor space. For his collection of books, notebooks, manuscripts, and letter files increases, he must live in an apartment large enough to house it all. When all these factors are considered, it is not surprising if the genealogist of national reputation finds at the end of the year that despite a good gross business, he is no better off financially than some of his less known competitors in smaller towns. At any rate, enough has been said to indicate that genealogy is less lucrative than most professions and many trades. There is, of course, another side to the picture. The work is pleasant. It takes the genealogist away on trips to different places with expenses paid, and it introduces him to a very agreeable class of people. For it has been my experience that the vast majority of the people who employ professional genealogists are pleasant, kind, and interesting individuals. In nearly 50 years of professional experience, I have had only 2 bad accounts. This of itself speaks volumes for the character of those who employ genealogists. And then there is the work. If the genealogical bug once bites you, you are a doomed man, and never again will you be happy except when attempting to trace the elusive ancestor. It is all the fascination of a game for one who loves it. It is like working out a chess problem or a crossword puzzle, but much more exhilarating, for the pawns in this game were once living human beings. You have ancestral charts in blank, which theoretically can be filled in completely with the names of your ancestors, and there is no elation akin to that which you experience when a long-sought forebear is discovered and an empty space on the chart becomes a name and an entity. Naturally, there is drudgery in every kind of work, and when you are chained to genealogy for 10 hours a day, 6 or 7 days a week, it takes problems of more than unusual interest to bring back the old thrill. After half a century, however, I can still enjoy that pristine elation. And if one is born genealogist, he can never bring quite the same zest to any other kind of work. What qualifications should a professional genealogist possess? First of all, enthusiasm for the work. But he must have more than this, for I have known enthusiastic genealogists, both amateur and professional, who are not even capable of grasping the elements of a problem. He must have a mind that can grasp and retain and work with an infinite mass of detail. He must be, by natural bent, a detail worker, not an executive. An unusually good memory is a tremendous asset. If after working an hour on a problem or ancestral line, the would-be genealogist cannot carry all the essential elements of names and dates in his head without reference to his notes, he would do well to decide that nature intended for him for some other profession. Imagination is another important factor, and I would rather see an inexperienced genealogist show too much imagination than not enough. The unimaginative genealogist works too mechanically. He may cover thoroughly the records that seem essential, but if these fail to yield the desired information, he gives up the quest. The more imaginative searcher may detect clues in the very same records, and by following them may eventually solve the problem. Of course, the imagination of the novice is somewhat wild, and he is too apt to discover clues in every record he sees. Experience usually tones down the too exuberant imagination, and the genealogist needs to develop a critical judgment which will enable him to decide without wasted effort what clues are likely to have significance. Clients prefer not to employ genealogists who run up expense accounts following will-o-wisps without result. Special knowledge is also very necessary, and the genealogist cannot learn too much of the social customs, laws, or inheritance, paths of migration, and much else pertaining to the history and culture of our country during the colonial and early national periods. To make clear the kind of knowledge a genealogist must acquire, let us consider a few examples. If a John Peters is listed in a muster roll of the Revolutionary War, and one man of the name is found who was age 42 and another was but 17, to which would the service most probably pertain? It would affect the problem whether the service was in the Continental Line or whether it was in the militia. And there's a footnote. The youth would probably be the soldier, if in the Continental Line. Men older than 42 often served in the militia companies, which as a rule were only called out to repel attacks. These are probabilities. There are exceptions. Could a John Brown, who lived in Springfield, Massachusetts, be appointed an officer in the Northampton Militia Company, or trained band in 1758? Or could he have captained a company composed mostly of Northampton men recruited for service in the French and Indian War? Could a William Rowe, whose tombstone states that he died April 23rd, 1800, aged 82 and 7 days, be identical with the William Rowe who was baptized on April 6th, 1718? And the answer is yes. The footnote says yes, the calendar change in 1752 makes it possible. If the will of Robert Thompson in Boston in 1668 failed to name any daughter Mary, is it possible that a Mary Thompson, who was married in Boston in 1666, was nevertheless his daughter, provided other dates are in harmony with the assumption? And the footnote reads, yes, a daughter was often portioned and movable at marriage. If she had received her full portion before her father made his will, he would ordinarily so specify. However, the father of the period kept account books as a rule, showing what had been advanced to their adult children, and sometimes wills were crudely or informally drawn and failed to mention children who had received their full portions. If Edmund Brown in 1675 sold land at Fairfield, Connecticut, which had been laid out to Thomas Williams, an original proprietor, and if you failed to find a recorded conveyance for Williams to Brown, would you assume that Brown had married the daughter of Williams? Would it make a difference in your conclusion if Brown's wife signed the deed to him? What would be the interpretation of the wife signing if the land were located in the province of New York? The names used are fictitious, and I've not given answers to all the questions. Let the reader who thinks genealogical research requires no special knowledge or training study these hypothetical questions. They are but a few examples of the wide range of knowledge which the professional genealogist must acquire if he is not to misinterpret the records he finds and mislead his client. The genealogist must be accurate. Accuracy is a prime essential for the professional. No living person is infallible, and the best of genealogists makes mistakes. There are bound to be occasional errors of judgment in interpreting the meaning of records, but errors of this type should be infrequent if a genealogist is experienced. There are clerical errors, usually the product of fatigue or caused by momentary mental lapse. In printing, there are overlooked typographical errors, although here we should not be too hasty in blaming the genealogist. Such is the sheer perversity of print that I have known errors to appear in a printed book in places where the final proof was correct. Such errors can only be blamed to some accident in the composing room, which occasionally hastily resetting of a few lines. The work of any genealogist should be judged by what is characteristic, not by what is exceptional. A good test for accuracy is to take a page in any book and copy it with fair rapidity. Then have another person read the page to you, specifying every capital and punctuation mark. If after several trials you still make 2 or 3 mistakes in a page, your accuracy is below the standard required for a genealogist. Within limits, accuracy may be improved by training, but some persons possess a photographic vision which others lack. And if trouble is organic, no amount of training can make you a more accurate copyist. To sum up, the professional genealogist should possess certain natural aptitudes sharpened by experience. He should be painstaking, thorough, and accurate. He should be able to weigh evidence, to assemble in logical order a host of details, to construct hypotheses and test them. He needs the detective instinct, and experience must have taught him which of several clues is most likely to lead him to his object. He needs imagination, toned down by long training and directed by sound reasoning. Especially, he needs an excellent memory. Granted this natural equipment, much study and special knowledge are essential. A genealogist should not be opinionated, but should always keep an open mind and be ready to admit on occasion that his first conclusion was a mistaken one. Those who fear that an administration of error will damage their professional reputations are usually those whose reputations as genealogists will not suffer much from any admission. Adherence to truth is more important than professional pride. And there's a quote, "He that can have patience can have what he will." Benjamin Franklin. And this concludes our reading of Chapter 7, Genealogy as a Profession.